So welcome, everybody. It is so wonderful to see you all here. We have an incredibly special treat for our Lunch and Learn this afternoon. Joining us from Jerusalem, Tamar Biala is the co-editor of Dear Shuni. I have a couple copies here if you want to borrow, but I need them back because they're too precious to me. These are actually the English translation, so very user-friendly. Dear Shuni, Contemporary Women's Midrash. She has taught at the Shalom Hartman Institute and trained teachers and IDF Army officers. She teaches in various Batei Midrash, rabbinical schools, and adult education programs in the US and Israel. On a personal note, I first had the great privilege of learning from Tamar at Wexner. She was the faculty guest speaker, and it changed my life. What she does, this book is Women's Midrashim. Traditionally, all of our midrash, and this is a lunch and learn on midrash, so this group is very well learned in midrash, is a rabbinic male tradition, and it's a wonderful and brilliant tradition, but it's lacking in that there are no women voices. And I think one of the great geniuses of her work is that it elevates women's voices into authorship roles of midrash, which gives us more God and gives us more Torah that was inaccessible to us when only mediated through the male voice. Similarly, she'll introduce her session today, but it focuses on women's midrashim in the aftermath of October 7th. So she also has a current project called Beit Torata, which is regendering the entire Torah. And again, it's radical and it seems almost heretical. And I think in Jerusalem, there are very loud voices of opposition that she's up against. But I just want to say, if it's okay, that it's not just a feat for the cause of feminism, though if it was, Dayenu, that would be enough. It's for all of us because it gives us, again, more Torah, more deeper perspectives on God that was previously unavailable to us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tamar. I'm so glad that you could take time to Zoom from Israel, from Jerusalem, to join us.
Thank you all for coming. So today I wanted to share with you several midrashim that Israeli women wrote after October 7th. I'm now editing a third Hebrew volume of midrashim written by women. I already published 2 volumes of dozens and dozens of women that I don't know most of them. Most of them were strangers when they sent me the pieces and I edited them. And these women are really from all over Israel, all denominations. I don't belong to any institution or any denomination. It's fantastic. It really includes right-wing Orthodox with extreme left secular, or women from kibbutzim, from cities, different ages. It's finally we start writing the other half of Jewish text that we always lacked. So you know that Midrash is this genre that imitates the literary tools that the rabbis invented to to bring their agendas or their life experiences, their wishes, their cries into the public sphere, saying that as if it was all in the Bible, and we just interpret the Bible with the midrashic tools. So women finally are doing this as well. Since women joined the Batei Midrash, the houses of study, both in the States and also in Europe and in Israel, now we have more, and a second or third generation of women that study Torah. And they really learned how to imitate the rabbis, and to express their calls. So the pieces that I received since October 7 surprised me. I wasn't sure what am I gonna get. I was even scared. And maybe I'll begin the whole story with October 7 itself. So that morning, 6:30, we woke up to the siren here at home in Jerusalem, and we were confused. My niece was here with us. We didn't hear siren for years. So we went to the shelter room in my daughter's bedroom, and we keep Shabbos, so we didn't know whether to use our cell phones or not. It's but there was another siren and another siren. We didn't know, are we allowed to leave the room? What's happening? So we did put on the cell phones and started hearing from really 7 on um, names of kibbutzim. I heard this name of this kibbutzim over the years from a friend of mine who's the reform rabbi of these kibbutzim. She's the reform rabbi of Sha'ar HaNegev. It's a part of the Gaza envelope Jewish kibbutzim and moshavim. So on Motzei Shabbat, when Shabbos and the Chag were over, I called her. Yael is her name, and I asked her, Yael, what's happening? And she was crying. She was devastated. She told me that her congregants from the different kibbutzim are calling her all day. Call the police, call the police. We hear the shooting. We hear our neighbors. We don't hear our neighbors anymore. And she didn't know what to do. Of course, she called the police. She called whoever she knows, but it was a chaos in Israel. It was a total mess. So I called my sister. It was Motzei Shabbat. I called my sister, who's a social worker, and I asked her, what shall we do with Yael? She's collapsing. Someone has to, what's happening? So she told me, nobody knows what's happening. I know that in my clinic, if all the social workers are freaking out and become dysfunctional, we have a supreme, I don't know, some therapist that is in charge of us, and she takes care of us, and then we have to function. It's we don't have we can't not function. So she said, so you should go to Yael and be her social worker. So I was, what do I know? Whatever, like everyone here, you do what you don't know just because you have to. So I went with my daughters on Sunday, and we brought food to Yael, and she was still receiving phones from congregants for Kfar Aza that weren't released yet. After 30 plus hours, we're still, and from others that were evacuated to Eilat, to kibbutzim in the north. We didn't know that the north will be also so troubled at the beginning, and all the Tel Aviv area. So, and she was crying all the time, showing me the names that she knows already of people that died. And she told me, I'm a bereaved rabbi. I'm a bereaved rabbi. Nobody taught me in rabbinical school here in HUC in Jerusalem how to how to function. And she used to do the burials in the years before in the kibbutzim. So she realized that she's gonna have to function soon, but she didn't even know what kind of weird burials she will have to do. And then reburials, because the folks weren't allowed to be buried. I don't know how to say it in a normal language. The burials couldn't be in the kibbutzim at the first few months because nobody was allowed to come close. So they buried mostly parts of people in wherever they were evacuated to. And then she did reburials when they moved back to the south. So some of the people were glued together. So it was family grave. And so just think of the, I don't know, the inner powers that she needed to find to do all of this. And um, during the first few months, I was in contact with her a lot. And at some point, I suggested to her, she knows that I'm doing Dirshuni, that I'm working on these midrashim for years, for the last more than, let's say, 25 years. So I asked her, would you like to write a midrash and let us let the nation hear about your experience? What is it to be a rabbi in such hour? We know stories of rabbis from the Holocaust. We know stories of rabbis when the Romans were threatening Jews. So your experience as a woman is very precious. We don't have such a, you know, your unique voice. So she told me, I will write something, but why not to turn to the women from the kibbutzim themselves, the survivors, and ask them to write? So I told her, what do you mean? Aren't the kibbutzim are all secular and communist and anti-religious? So she told me, what, no, where do you live? It's not the even the first generation that established the kibbutzim is now in a different place. How come I'm a rabbi there? I'm arranging prayers, I'm arranging ceremonies. She arranged a month before October 7th a bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah for the 80-year-olds in the kibbutzim that never had celebrated anything, and she taught them how to lane and write a dvar Torah, and they made talitot for everyone. So I realized that I still have the stigmas from, I don't know, from 1948. And I took her suggestion. She gave me a few phone numbers, and gently I turned to these women and asked them, would they share us with their experiences in a midrashic language and form. She gave me only phone numbers of women that were teaching either in the high school, in the local high school, Jewish studies. She gave me a phone number of one, not a professor of Midrash. She teaches in colleges in the Negev, Midrash. So, okay, I turned to these ladies, and some took I don't know, they accepted the invitation and said that they will send me something. So as I waiting for them to write and for Yael, and I started receiving other midrashim from other women from Israel, from the north, from Jerusalem, with different experiences of theirs. So what I would like to do today is to share with you at least 3 pieces. Maybe we'll have time to read some more. I got more than 10 and they're all translated into English, and I'm very obsessive, and I feel a great missionary to make the sound, these voices heard, especially that one of these women that we will read her piece told me that she made all her family be quiet in the shelter room for so long, and now that will be her scream, that her voice will be finally heard. So not easy, midrashim. And the way Jewish men don't think alike, and that's why our culture is so diverse and so rich, and it's all all the discussions and disagreements. So Jewish women don't think alike. You could have seen this in the first volumes of Dirshuni, when women relate to the same person in the Bible, the same woman, let's say, and analyze her character and judge her morally in very different ways from each other, and all feminist women. So it's very interesting. So regarding the war, women don't, they're not, especially they're not in the same emotional state place when they relate. So some are very angry, others are very sad, others fight with God, some can't care less about God and they fight with the government. So it's different aspects and experiences. So the first midrash that we will read was written by a survivor from Kfar Aza. Her name is Liora Eilon. She used to teach, I think she was maybe a Bible teacher in the past. I know that she did a lot of, she was a great peace activist for many, many years. That was, I think, the main thing that she was busy with. And this is how Yael, my friend, the rabbi, met her before she became the rabbi of this area. So now Liora is in her, I think, late 70s. And that day she was in the shelter room with her daughter, I think with her daughter-in-law and with granddaughters, two granddaughters. Her son um, was a part of the group in the kibbutz. There are some guys that used to do that in the army. They have an experience of fighting. So the government in a specific room in the kibbutz left not pistols, guns for them in case one terrorist is getting into the kibbutz. So they have to run to this room, Nishkiya, where all the weaponry, and to pick up and to take care of the kibbutz. So the name of this group in Hebrew is Kitat Konenut, that they have to wait to be on call if anything happens. Of course, the terrorists knew exactly where the room is because they prepared very well. And whenever these guys arrived, they killed them immediately. They were waiting for them. So her son died in the first hour of in the morning, but she didn't know it, until a long time afterwards. So while they were in the room, at some point, and I know all of this from a video that I saw on her on YouTube actually, or somewhere on the net. At some point, the army arrived at her house, and it took everyone time to open the doors because they thought it's terrorists saying that they're the army, like it did happen to some families. But this was the army, and they opened the door. The girls were hiding under the bed. But this grandmother, Liora, they asked her, they said, we're getting calls now from some families in the kibbutz that need us now. So she didn't know exactly what to do, and her granddaughter rolled from beneath the bed and opened her WhatsApp group, with her cell phone and for hours told the soldiers the directions and gave them links. I don't know how you do it to different places, and that was like a base. The soldiers came back and forth to her to get the information. At some point, there was a severe battle at some point, so they all had to leave the house. And Liora begged them to evacuate them first, or that someone will stay with them. They couldn't. They left, and indeed, the terrorists arrived and tried to open the door. And they were, WhatsApping the guys. Now they're here. Eventually, it was very complicated because the terrorists took another bedroom in this house and hid there. And whoever tried to come in, they shot him. But they came from a different angle, the soldiers, and took them either from the window or I don't know how. They took them out and bombed her house. Um, so, so Liora wrote a piece, and we will read it now. And that was the first piece I actually received, and I was shocked by the how shall I say, vulnerability that she's willing to share and expose. And it's a very gentle piece. So I'll share it with you. Is it big enough?
Yes, I believe so. I wonder if I can.
I'll try to. I don't manage
Okay,
to
everyone?
hear. Is it better?
Perfect. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Great. So the name of the piece is The Power of a Community to Diminish Suffering in the World. And she begins by quoting from Lamentation this verse, "Cry, she will cry at night." Who is she? She is Jerusalem. In Hebrew, it's Bachot Tivke Balayla. And it's an image, a metaphor that Jerusalem is really all the Jewish people, and it's the first destruction of the temple. And Jerusalem is like a woman that cries and nobody comes to comfort her. This is the beginning of lamentation that we read on Tisha B'Av. So she quotes not only this verse, but also what the Talmud is saying when on Masechet Sanhedrin and Sanhedrin tractate. So it says at night. Why the verse says at night particularly? For all who cry at night, one who hears their voice cries along with them. So that's what the Talmud is saying, that the word at night is not for nothing. It has a specific meaning, that at night you can be heard and people will be with you. And now she's taking a different analysis of this pasuk, and she's saying, cry, she will cry. This is none other than a command. Cry, you will cry. Because in Hebrew, the word tivke, she will cry, is the same as you will cry, tivke. It's interesting. So she says, no, the meaning of the verse wasn't that someone else will cry, but it's a mitzvah for you, for us, for each of us to cry. And she explains, and she gives a different reasoning. One must cry at the sorrow of one's neighbor whose son or daughter has died, for thus he takes away a little of their sorrow and puts himself a little in their place. At night, for in the daytime their neighbors see their grief and may cry with them. At night time, people are left alone with their grief, and this is why it's written, cry she will cry at night, that their neighbor cry with them at night, and as the weeping and sorrow are shared, they are diminished a little in the world. So the first piece of her midrash is that, first of all, it's not it's not the other that will cry, it's you that will cry. And she explains that it's precisely at night, because from her experience, all day, there are people who came to, the Shiva called, I don't know, the representatives of the army or the social workers of the government, whoever are there, in their working hours at day. And at night, when she's alone, it's the most difficult time where she really needs I don't know, someone to be with her or someone to care for her. And um, I mean, we know also in Israel, and I'm sure that in America too, that the PTSD, the nights are the trouble. That at least in Israel, so many soldiers with PTSD, they pee in bed and they have nightmares and they can't sleep at night. So she teaches us that it's a mitzvah to cry with others, that the night is actually the problematic time. And also, I don't know how to say it in English, in physics, there is a law that talks about mass, that there's a certain mass in the world, and it can take different shapes, but it's always the same amount of mass in the universe. So she is doing like a physical law of pain, that there is an amount of pain that is there, and if you are crying for someone else, you as if take a little bit from their pain and it spreads a little bit more. Now, the next part of the midrash, she's gonna quote the Talmud. I mentioned the tractate Sanhedrin before, that explains why at night she will cry. And the Talmud brings a little story, Talmudic story about an experience that the rabbis had. She quotes this story, we will read it. The story is quite unbearable morally. It's not clear what is it doing what was the purpose of bringing this memory, but she will interpret this story and will redempt it and will explain it in a different way that will enable us to learn something deep. So first, the Talmudic story. There was a woman who was Rabban Gamliel's neighbor, whose son died, and she would cry for him at night. Rabban Gamliel heard her voice and cried along with her until his eyelashes fell out. The next day, his students took note and removed her from his neighborhood. This is the Talmudic story. Rabban Gamliel, who was the head of the Sanhedrin, an important figure that they all wanted him to function and to be there for them. So he had the heart, the compassion to hear her at night, and he cried for her. But his students in the morning saw that it caused him to be sort of dysfunctional, so they moved her from the neighborhood. So she's asking Liora, but Rabban Gamliel was fulfilling what was written, cry she will cry at night. The way Liora understand it, that it's a mitzvah to do the crying with the other person. So why did they remove her from his neighborhood? And she is inventing a weird answer, and she will explain it slowly. His students said because his eyelashes fell out, and it was because he was crying alone. His neighbors didn't hear him crying and didn't cry along with him for that neighbor who lost her child. That is why we removed her from the neighborhood. So they're explaining, Leora is explaining, that they really removed her for her own sake because she lived in a neighborhood that, except Rabban Gamliel, people didn't know how to cry for her. People weren't menschlichkeit, weren't behaving appropriately, and they had a plan. And now she explains, Liora, the plan that as if the rabbis had, because she in their eyes was like Abraham our father, of whom it said. So she's going to compare between this lady mourning on her son to Abraham, and the comparison is going to be interesting. She is going to quote the rabbis themselves in a different tractate, in a different place, describing Abraham in a very interesting way. And Liora will explain to us why Abraham and this mourning lady were similar and what was the plan of these rabbis that removed her. So what did the rabbis, the traditional midrash, said about Abraham? And it's on the verse Lech Lecha, the first introduction of God with Abraham, when he tells him, this is it, you should gather yourself from your history, from your everything, and go. So the traditional midrash says, what was Abraham our father like? Like an amphora of persimmon fragrance, sealed shut by a tight cord, laid aside in a corner, whose scent doesn't carry. But when it's stirred, its scent diffuses. Thus the Holy Blessed One said to Abraham, our father, move yourself from place to place, and your name will grow great in the world. Go you, Lech Lecha. So what did the rabbis said about Abraham? That he was similar to a locked amphora. Amphora are these, tiny bottles from 2,000-3,000 years ago, maybe even more, that was filled with persimmon fragrance, which was the most expensive perfume oil in the ancient world. So he had this amazing thing in him, but this amphora is sealed with a tight cord in a corner. Nobody can enjoy it. So God tells Abraham, move, shake yourself, move from place to place, that the blessing, your quality, the thing that you can bring to the world will spread. And now what do they, so what's similar between this woman and Abraham? The students sought to remove her out of her neighborhood, that she would stir about in the world, going from one neighborhood to another, crying for her son, and her voice would be like a shofar that sounds from one end of the earth to another, calling out, cry, you will cry in the night, for you are the community of Israel. And so Rabban Gamliel will not cry alone for her in the night, but the people of his community and all the communities will cry along with them. And through the sorrow will diminish a little in the world. So the purpose of these students of Rabban Gamliel was a positive one. They realized that she, in her cry, had the effect to teach Rabban Gamliel to cry. Maybe we can use her or with her teach the rest of the Jewish people empathy and care. And since she stirred about in their neighborhoods, the people cried along with her, and their tears cleansed their souls. And so her mind eased a little, and she found some respite for her soul. So Liora, you see, she really speaks about herself, I guess, but nobody wants to say that they need love and that someone will be with them at night and directly. And she is asking for help through writing this midrash. And on the way, she also how shall I say, redeem this horrible story of the rabbis that couldn't care less about this neighbor, about this lady, and makes them as if saints that they wanted more and more people to cry with her and ease her pain. I'll just say that Liora, that was really her experience, because since she was evacuated, she moves from place to place telling her story, sometimes with her granddaughter. I know that she visited the States too. And I guess sharing her story is meaningful to her and ease her pain, I hope. I'll end this part, this midrash, by telling you that Yael, my friend, the rabbi, she had an idea. Before Shavuos last year, before Shavuot, the festival, the holiday, so a lot of Jews around the world study Shavuot night all night. It's Kabbalat Torah, receiving of the Torah. This is the time to study. So she had an idea. Maybe we can. She offered me and her congregants that wrote the pieces, the different pieces. Maybe we should do a Zoom class before Shavuot, the day before Shavuot, and invite all her congregants from all the kibbutzim that are now spread in different places. Some of the kibbutzim split also to several places, and all the family members of these women that wrote the pieces. And we will do a 1 hour class by Zoom to these communities here, like a mirror, how these friends experienced and what were their calls. So we did it, and you can imagine I could hardly speak. I was supposed to introduce them and to talk a little bit about the project, but it was very painful. And these ladies, one after the other, explained their pieces. And I'm telling this story because Liora told me it afterwards. We were always in touch by emails. She told me that a friend told her, "Did you notice you left this lady outside, moving from between the neighborhoods? It's are you going to leave her outside?" Like, I guess he was maybe talking about himself. And she told him she is outside. She still didn't come home. The Kfar Aza wasn't it's still a mess there. So she doesn't have a home anyway because it was bombed by the army. So she told me maybe one day I'll be able to write a second midrash, but it's still her fate. One last thing about Liora, because I love her so much. Before Pesach, she sent me a midrash. There is one Mishnah teaching how to clean for Pesach. And it talks about chametz, how to clean the chametz from Pesach. And it talks about if there is a hole in the wall, you have to put your hand until as much as you can. And if there is the neighborhood should also stick his hand. And some Mishnah that has to do with chametz. So she told me, she sent this. The midrash that she wrote is about the chametz that is in the heart. And she explains how neighbors that hate each other which she really means Israelis that hate each other. It's siblings. She's talking about siblings, all the how can they come back touching each other and clean the chametz in their hearts? And it's not a kitschy, sweet midrash. It's a heavy, serious one because she used to be an activist, a peace activist, and help and do all these coexistence groups and conversations. And now she's doing it in Israel, just between Israelis, between right and extreme right and left. That everyone here has, a very passionate opinion about. So she told me that she's dedicating herself now to this. So this Mishnah, this midrash that she wrote on this Mishnah will be, of course, in the siblings. There's an old lady who lost her son for hatred that is teaching these siblings how to listen, not how to talk, but how to listen to other people's pain. So that's Liora. Um, the next midrash that we're going to read together, is there anyone that want to say something about this midrash before we're moving?
I'll circulate a microphone. We have a comment from Sheila. Go ahead.
It's like sitting Shiva.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, because it was the Shiv'a beOctober, the 7th is also a Shiva. So there are a lot of stickers in Israel and cars and bus stops only with the word Shiv'a. But it's on a black thing. It looks like it plays on it that we're still in a Shiva since the 7th, we're still in a Shiva. So the second midrash is gonna be difficult in a different way. It's an angry one, and I have to do some introduction before it. So the person who wrote it is Nurit Hirschfeld-Skupinski from Kibbutz Nachal Oz, the next midrash. And Nurit is the one that I told you that used to teach midrash in different colleges in the Negev. I turned to her, very gently. I didn't know if I'm bothering them, if it's appropriate, but I asked her, would you please, contribute a midrash to Dirshuni? And she told me, what do you know? I already wrote, because she was teaching for many years a series of midrashim, very beloved midrashim, that appears in this volume of Eicha Rabbah, the traditional midrash on lamentation. And in this series of traditional midrashim, there are descriptions of both the first temple's fall, destruction, and the second one, the Babylonians and the Romans and the horrors. So in this list, I don't know, of stories, there are personal descriptions, like specific stories about people and how they went through the horror. And so what she did was she took several traditional stories and intertwined them with stories that she saw or heard from her friends in other kibbutzim. So it's very powerful, all her pieces, because it's really like it's like a zipper really between the stories, and it's you don't know, there is no gap between past and the present. It's very disturbing. So the first midrash that she sent me, which is the one that we're going to read now, is echoing and mentioning a very famous story that you may have heard it as Hannah v'shiv'at banea, Hannah and her 7 sons. This is a very famous story about a woman that her 7 sons were murdered by the Roman Caesar. We'll read it soon. And there is there's a moment in the story that was echoing for her the experience of a woman that I'm going to tell about her. So first I'll tell the story of the woman in Nir Oz, in Kibbutz Nir Oz. Then we will read the traditional story about Chana v'Shivat Banea, and then we will read Nurit's Midrash and how she combined the stories. So the original story that Liora heard, and she actually, there is a video of this moment that we will watch now. It's about, there was one family in Kibbutz Nir Oz that 6 family members, 3 generations were killed on October 7th. The story with Kibbutz Nir Oz is so frustrating because the first wave of terrorists arrived to the kibbutz, I don't know, 6:37. They killed whoever they could, they burned whoever they could, whatever, slaughtered whoever they could, and then left. A second wave of just folks from Gaza, civilians, came to the kibbutz, kept killing few other folks that did the mistake and thought it's over, and also stole everything from the kibbutz, literally everything, and left. So only half an hour afterwards, at 1:30, the first soldier appeared, but there was not even one shot that the army shot there in this kibbutz. A lot of people were killed and also kidnapped from Nir Oz. So the grandmother of this family of 6 folks that died there, several weeks after October 7th, got permission from the army to come for a few hours to pick up some memorabilia. I don't know how to say it, some objects from her grandchildren, from her daughter, from the other grandparents. And she's from another kibbutz, but she survived, so she came to Kibbutz Nir Oz. At the beginning, the first few months, it was still dangerous to go there. So if you wanted to bury someone, maybe you would get permission just for a few minutes. And if you want to pick up things or clothes or things, so only if whatever. So she got there. And at some point, when she was going on one of the paths in the kibbutz, coincidence, I don't know how to say, godly, whatever, God is behind this, I don't know what. That day exactly, the Minister of Defense with his crew came to the kibbutz to check it. And as she's going in the path, she meets the minister. Nobody gets to meet in a war the minister of so she meets him and she was so shocked and she so wanted to scream, but all that comes out is like, and then it's really a 2-3 minute video. I'll show you just 1 minute. She just repeats she's saying it in Hebrew, but it's just the body language that really makes the impression. She tells him again and again, why didn't you call just a few hours ago when they knew already that something is happening? They didn't know what, during the night. Why didn't you call them and they would leave? Why did they have to lose all these? And she's blaming him, but in such a broken way because she was too upset, so she couldn't, speak normally as if. So I just want to share with you this minute from the video because this video left such an impression on Nurit, who wrote the Midrash, and she really relates to this woman in her Midrash. So you should have her image in your head. So can we see just a minute of it, please?
Yes, I will get it up. So let me share it with you. Okay.
He's trying to talk, but you can't hear him. He's asking, how can it be? How can it be? She's saying I don't have a heart and my heart is pain. Why? Where were you? And so on. We can put it off. Thank you. If you want the link and watch it later, we can put it in the chat. It's on YouTube. It's just a few minutes. So Nurit from Kibbutz Nachal Oz saw this video from Kibbutz Nir Oz, and it reminded her the story of Hannah and Shivat Banea. So let's read together the traditional story and then see what she did with this. I'll just explain one last thing. In the traditional midrash that we will read, her name is not Hannah, but Miriam. Miriam, because both in the Israeli and the Babylonians traditions, the name of this woman is Miriam bat Tanchum. Only when it was translated into Greek and the Christians took this story to be one of theirs. Christly stories, so they changed it to Hannah, and now we all call her Hannah. But in our sources, her name, this lady's name is Miriam, so that's why you'll see the name Miriam. So first, I'll read this passage. The first passage is the introduction to all the midrashim that Nurit wrote, and they're named midrashim of destruction. When the home was destroyed, when our world on October 7 was destroyed, it seemed to us as though the stories of the destruction emerged from our letters, out of letters 2,000 years ago. The words were made flesh, becoming a grieving, anguished, despondent reality, and the things that are hard even to utter, and the mouth cannot articulate them. I'll just explain that the last verse, that she's going to say something that it's difficult and hard to express. This is, she took this expression from the Talmud. There are several moments in the rabbis' days, not only from the Talmud, also from other collections of the rabbis, that they want to say something so heretic. So they first say, "Oh, I'm going to say something that this shouldn't be said, and it's I can't say it," and then they say it. So she took it from them, and now she's going to say something that she thinks it shouldn't be said or something. So now we're reading the traditional piece. The story of Miriam bat Tanchum, who was taken captive along with her 7 sons. Caesar took them and put them in 7 different rooms. He brought out the first and said to him, "Bow down to the idol." He replied, "God forbid, I do not bow to the idol." He said to him, "Why?" "Because thus it's written in our Torah, I am God, your Lord." He took him out and killed him straight away. So you see the 3 dots here? It's because something similar happened to each kid. Each kid in his turn, the Caesar is bringing in front of his mother and demands that he will bow to the idol. Each kid brings a different verse from the Bible to explain why he rejects the offer and why he wouldn't convert to whatever Caesar offers them. And he kills them one after the other. He brought out the 7th. It's already towards the end of the traditional midrash. He brought out the 7th, and he was the youngest of them all. He said to him, "My son, bow down to the idol." He replied, "God forbid." And then he brings his verse, and he refuses. And let's see what happens. He immediately commanded that he be killed. His mother fell upon him, hugging and kissing him, and she said to him, "My son, go to Abraham, the father of all of you, and tell him, 'So says my mother. Don't be too full of yourself and say, I built an altar. I laid on it my son Isaac. For our mother built 7 altars and laid 7 sons on them in one day. You, the trial, I, the act. While she was kissing and hugging him, Caesar gave the order and they killed him before her. So the mother asks her son that when he reaches heavens and meet Abraham, she will challenge him and tell him, enough with this being the hero of the of at least Exodus, at least Bereshit, um, Genesis, that you had the trial to sacrifice your child. Eventually, you didn't even have to, but I had to do this. And she's like expressing her frustration, anger through these words. With time, that woman lost her mind and fell from the roof and died, fulfilling what was written. She who bore 7 was wretched in Jeremiah. And a bat call, a divine voice from heaven, called out saying, the mother of sons is rejoicing. So why after this lady dies, bat call is saying that this mother probably is rejoicing, maybe rejoicing meeting her children in the heavens. I don't know how to explain it otherwise. And the Holy Spirit cried out, saying, for these do I weep. Also a quote from Lamentation. So the traditional midrash ends that all heavens, whoever can express a voice or thought in heaven participates in the pain on the loss of this woman and her tragedy. And now we reach Nurit's words in this midrash. When the home, the temple, was destroyed, the 7 sons of Miriam, Bat and Chum, were murdered before her eyes. I just want to fix something here because it's impossible to read it. So the 7 sons of Miriam, Bat and Chum, were murdered before her eyes, for they refused to bow down to the idol. When they came to kill her, her last child, Miriam, Bat and Chum asked of her youngest son, my son, go to Abraham, the father of all of you, and tell him, so said my mother, don't be too full of yourself and say, I built an altar, I laid on it my son Isaac. For our mother built 7 altars and laid 7 sons on them in one day, you the trial, and I the act. When our world was destroyed on October 7th, grandmothers and grandfathers, aunts and uncles stood facing burnt, wrecked homes of whole families that were no more, with shocked, silent gaze, as though turning to the men of status and authority entrusted with the security and future of the nation, screaming in horror, where were you? We, the act, and you failed the trial. So this passage is really describing this lady that we saw, the grandmother that comes to her children's kibbutz and uh, see the destruction and turns to the authority, to the minister, and tells him, where were you? You failed, you failed. And the act was done, and the sacrifice, I don't know how to say it, the slaughter was done. Miriam Bat Tanchum knew that her children chose death so that they would not commit a Yehareg v'Bal Ya'avor, a sin which one should rather die than do, the heresy one. And her end was that she lost her mind, fell from the roof and died, and the Holy Spirit cried out, saying, for these do I weep. Yet these family members, like this lady that came to Nir Oz, these family members, what will become of them who have not even that meager comfort? What will the Holy Spirit cry out for the women and men of the Gaza envelope whose families were erased in one day? So what she's doing here is both expressing anger, not at the Romans, not at Caesar, but at Abraham, as if the folks that are supposed to be in charge, she doesn't confront God, but she confronts Abraham. And she says, see, just witness what's happening here that is so much worse than what you tell us. And then she speaks about heaven itself, and she says, okay, when Miriam bat Tanchum died, all heaven was screams of pain on her. What would there is there a scream now in heaven on us, or on these families that died? When I saw this last paragraph, I'm exposing here my narrow-mindedness, I'm afraid. We were in touch. I didn't know her, but we had some Zoom meetings to go over the pieces. So I asked her, why do you care about if in heavens anyone is crying for the folks in the kibbutzim? Aren't you secular and don't believe in anything metaphysics? So she asked me, what do you know about my world? What do you know about my spirituality? And I realized what a dumb question it was. And so I do tshuva on this, and yes, spirituality is very dynamic, and each of us is going through different phases, and people and families, and it's she has the right to scream at heavens. She has the right to scream at the minister, at Netanyahu, at whoever she wants to. So that was Nurit's first piece. She sent several like these, that each of them is using a famous traditional story about the destructions of the temple, and shows how it echoes in our experience. I don't know how, if I can, do we still have time? Can I share with you more pieces? I'm willing to go for another half an hour or so if you're fine with this.
We're so grateful for that. I guess what I'll say is it is approaching the 1 o'clock hour, which is what we budgeted for this. So if you need to leave, you will not be rude for getting up and going at any time. But certainly if Tamar is generous with her time, we would love that. I'll say at some point I'll have to leave for a meeting, but I am here for the next 20 minutes. So
Okay.
yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Um, it's very important to me that you will see different angles, that different women brings different feelings. So I'll tell you just for the first few minutes before I'm bringing another text, that I received one text from a woman here in our community in Jerusalem. She is very active, trying to release the hostages, because she's very close friend of Rachel and John, who davens in our shul. And of course, Hirsch was in shul the night before in the dancing for Simchat Torah. And just a few hours later, he went to the... So the shul was devastated. So the person who wrote the midrash that I want to tell you about is a friend of John and Rachel. And actually, when they received the news, and they said Shiva, so there is this custom that in the end of the Shiva, someone is coming, so that, whoever sits Shiva sits on a low chair or just sits, and someone else is coming, and there are a few verses that are said that are comforting prophecy, and then you give them a hand, you lay a hand to them, and you help them, you lift them from the chair. So when John and Rachel and the girls were sitting Shiva, Oshrat, the friend from shul, was the one who raised them. But then, not long afterwards, her son died in the war, and she and her family were sitting Shiva, and John, in the end of their Shiva, was reading them the comfort and verses, and lifted them. It's very, very sad. So Oshrat, this person, we won't read her piece. She wrote about the mitzvah to pay in order to release hostages, pidyon shvuim. And she's doing a very serious work, proving that it's very important to God, and He did it. She brings the stories in the Bible that God releases shvuim. It's very, very beautiful piece, and she shows how He cared more than the rabbis, and of course more than the people in politics today. So that was one piece. Recently, she told me that she will write also about losing a son. So maybe these midrashim, 2000 years from now, will be the only thing that we will be this story of destruction. There was another person that wrote, she was evacuated from Kibbutz Sa'ad. Kibbutz Sa'ad, thank God, wasn't hurt because the folks from the kibbutzim very close to it warned them. When they were hurt, they still called the other kibbutzim around to warn them. So they managed to reach the weaponry and the room and take the weapons, but the terrorists reached them, but they just couldn't enter the kibbutz. They closed it and prevented the. So, but this person from Kibbutz Saad, when that night when they were evacuated by the army, saw and smelled the burnt of the kibbutzim around them, and were in touch with their friends and were evacuated for a long time too. So she wrote a piece on how fate is strange. She relates to the story of Cain and Abel. And in the story of Cain and Abel, that a brother kills his brother, so God punishes Cain, telling him that you will have to wander, and you won't, I don't remember the expression in English, but it's wandering and I don't know, roaming. So he was evacuated from society, and now the victim is evacuated. That was their feeling. So she wrote something very interesting about her experience. Then Yael, my friend, the Reform rabbi, wrote a beautiful piece on different prophecies in the Bible, those that believe in that those nations will never get along forever, and the other prophecies that believe that one day there will be common language and maybe common belief or something. So, but it's not an easy midrash because emotionally, the way she analyzes these pieces, but it's a little comforting. But I want to end actually with a horrible piece. Strange midrash written by an Orthodox woman whom I know for many years, Rivka Lubitch, and maybe in your shul too. There's this custom since the war began that the cantor, there's one chapter in Psalm that the cantor reads a verse and everyone repeats, and read a verse and everyone repeats. We will read it soon. I'm sure you're familiar with this chapter, maybe if not because of the war, so you heard it before. And she told me that whenever she went to shul, her husband is the rabbi of the place where they live, she couldn't stand it. She couldn't hear these verses that talk about how God is helping me, how God is protecting me. It freaked her out. So she rewrote this Psalm chapter. I don't know how you will feel with it. I think I'll tell you what I feel about it after we read it. I'm not going to read it. Can you, would someone, let's read first the traditional one. It's a short chapter, and then we will read her version. Okay, I'll skip, here it is. So here in bold is the traditional one. Would you be able to read it, please?
Yeah.
See on our end? Sure. Do we want someone in the room to read?
Whoever wants to read.
Any volunteers?
Isaiah and I.
Anybody else?
We do it every morning.
Okay, over here.
Every
So
evening.
read just the left.
Okay, you're gonna read the left.
A song of descents. I raised my eyes to the.
Ascent.
Accents.
Oh, so you want the front, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, a song of ascents. I will raise my eyes to the mountain. From whence will my help come? My help is from God, maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip, your guardian will not slumber. Here he neither sleeps nor slumbers, the guardian of Israel. God guards you, God shades you at his right hand. By day, the sun will not strike at you, nor the moon by night. Yeah, God will
Yeah, I
guard
know.
you from all harm. He will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming from now and forever.
Yeah, I have to fix this.
Yeah.
And now, if you can read slowly, Rivka's version.
Another volunteer from the room?
A song of descents. I raised my eyes to the mountains, and my help did not come. I have no help from God, maker of heaven and earth. He let my foot slip. He let my guardian slumber. Here he slept and slumbered, the guardian of Israel. God did not guard me. He did not shade me at my right hand. By day the sun struck at the moon, and me by night. God did not guard me from all harm. He did not guard my life. How will God guard my going and coming from now and forever?
So you couldn't imagine the state of heart of writing this piece. I'll say a few things about this. When Rivka sent me this to include it in the next volume of Dirshuni of the Women's Midrash, from some reason, I don't know how to explain this, I started crying all the cry that I didn't cry the months before. Even though I didn't expect God to do anything, most of the time I hardly believe in God, you know, but something in this desperation and loneliness and bitterness really touched me. And I was thinking, is this heresy? I don't think it's heresy. I think it's more religious than saying cliche prayers that you don't believe in. And it reminded me, and maybe with this I will end this meeting. It reminded me that many years ago I studied in the Hardman Beit Midrash when I was young, in my 20s, and David Hartman was teaching us from time to time, the Neil's father, and he taught us this Talmudic passage that left such an impression on me. I really feel that I'm living under this sugya all my life since then. It's a Talmudic passage that talks about after the fall of the first temple, there were few prophets and sages that stopped saying in their davening a formula that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moses came up with, Hashem Hagadol Hagibor V'Anora. We say it in the beginning of the Shmona Esrei prayer, God the great, the mighty, I don't know how to translate it. So this formula, as if was it does appear in Moses' words somewhere in the Bible. So the Talmud is saying, how come some prophets and sages allowed themselves not to say this sentence, this prayer, this formula after the destruction of the temple? So that someone in the Talmud answers, because they saw that it didn't work for God, and the Babylonians won, and whatever, the state of Israel is horrible. How can they glorify God? So another person in the Talmud says, no, there were a group of folks in those days named Anshei Knesset Agdola, the people of the, I don't know how. Karen, I hear you saying something. Can you say it?
Great assembly.
Yeah. So what they did was that they actually kept using this formula in their prayers, but they did a midrash on it. When they said God the mightiest, they didn't mean mighty that that he could have protected the Jews. No, he couldn't. But it could have been so much more worse. So he's great that it wasn't that some of us are left and not we were all died. So, and then for the other word, Chachmei Knesset Agdola said, they came up with another midrash, another commentary. So they reinterpret these words in a way that enabled them to say this prayer, but not to mean it simply as if God is the image that is no longer, exist for them. So the Talmud says, oh, cool. So if you can interpret and give it a different meaning and still say it, so how come Yirmiyah and Daniel, the prophets Jeremiah and Daniel, how come they didn't use this strategy and they didn't say these words again? As if there was a tradition that they stopped using this formula, these two prophets. So the Talmud answers, these guys believed in God so much, and they knew that God cares about truth so much that they couldn't lie. That's what the Talmud says. There is such a level in religiosity that you know to shut up and not to glorify God sometimes. That if you don't want to lie about God to God, so sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's more religious to not to lie to God, not to say good, sweet words to God when maybe God is not even interested in these lies. And when I received this version of Psalms from Rivka, I immediately recalled that sugya, that maybe that's what she's doing. She's saying what God is for her now. God is not there. She doesn't understand. She wants maybe to wake him up with this criticism. I don't know. But she doesn't know how to live from now on. The last question is, how are you supposed to do it? And I decided that it's a religious text and it should be there among our texts. So I'm sorry that we're ending in that note. If you want to invite me again, I would love to. There are other midrashim about the war, and some of them has a little bit more optimist. But I think there is also room to mourn. And, you can't tell people to move quickly from a disaster to whatever, create the state of Israel again. I don't know how the Holocaust survivors had it in them to the energy to begin all again. But we are trying to be resilient. We don't have much of a choice. And thank you for caring. I have to tell you, after October 7th, the amount of love and care that Israel received from America was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I know that our friends from America are coming to visit all the time, and they're all going to see the kibbutzim and the Nova area. I didn't have the courage to go there. I'm not gonna go there. It's too scary for me. But people do have, I don't know, the good heart to do this. So I'm here if any of you want to talk about this in the future, or if you want to have other classes about it. So I'd love to. I'm a total missionary of making the voice of these ladies be heard.
Well, on behalf of, let's give a round of applause.
Toda.
Of everyone here at B'nai Yeshurun, we got a lot of enthusiastic thumbs ups when you offered to come back again. So of course that would be such an honor for us. We'd always love to have you. It's interesting. This was the final piece of our Voices of Israel series, which was sponsored by the Dovris Fund very generously. So a big thank you to Ruth and the Dovris Fund for sponsoring this. I think we had another speaker who also talked a little bit about hope, but mostly about despair. This was Rabbi Yoav Endi, who's in Kibbutz Hanaton. And I thought that was so helpful because instead of trying to just give us a false hope and optimism, it was really, what do we do with our despair that is productive and holy and helpful? And you've given us that in spades with what to do with our tears, and that our tears are actually playing a very important role in diminishing the suffering in the ways that we can, and the importance of tears. So thank you for making us cry today. We would be so honored to have you back anytime. Thank you so much again. I'm sorry I have to run off, but thank you, Tamar, so much. We loved having you.
תודה.